The Fijians only arrived last Friday but played some of reserve grade last Saturday. Today they were out surveying their new home ground with Hong Kong 7 representative Amini Naituyaki displaying an attitude which will endear himself to coach Keith Gollan.
First win last Saturday, and hope that will be a second win this Saturday.
The second rower will play in first grade on Saturday, while his countryman Joe Kokabusa and Isaiah Rasili will play reserve grade.
It's a bit different from rugby in Fiji, so it's good. It'll help us more to further our rugby career when we go back home.
For the second year running, the going is expected to be heavy in Wollongong tonight, sapping the reserves of forwards in particular, including Knights Adam Muir and Paul Harrigan. For that reason, the pair may be used sparingly tomorrow night against Souths, with Tony Butterfield one of many keen to compensate with extra time on the paddock.
No doubt the boys will be a little weary from tonight's game, but obviously being the oldest chap out there, I'll have to take a little bit more responsibility on my shoulders, but I'm looking forward to the challenge.
At 30, Butts' enthusiasm has never been greater, so much so he was knocking his own teammates over at training this morning. Hoping to have the same impact is Troy Fletcher, who gets his chance off the bench, the veteran full of praise for the 22-year-old.
Fletcher's improved out of sight. He's got skills of a forward and of a back, and I think he should have a good game tomorrow night.
Despite South's woes, there's been no complacency within the Knights ranks, with the Rabbits out to redeem themselves.
Passion, pride, it'll all come out and they'll be really firing.
In Local League West, take on Central and Curry confront the Bay tomorrow, while on Sunday Lakes host Souths, Maitland play Toronto and Cessnock confront Waratah. The Wildfires have already produced some respectable results this season and have played most of their games in Sydney. Tomorrow the team will be on show for the first time at No. 1 Sports Ground, with supporters and players' expectations high.
We've played something like 13 matches this season. It's finally good to have a game in Newcastle.
Last year, Canberra gave Newcastle 2 hidings, and tomorrow will be a good indication of how much the Wildfires have improved. And with Canberra missing several key players who are fulfilling Super 12 duties with the Brumbies, a major upset is not out of the question.
It's probably the best time to play them, getting them away from home. We haven't got really good memories of our last visit down there. We got a bit of a thumping, but this will be, if we're going to knock them off, this is the time to do it.
This little pig seems to be getting around, and although he may be an imposter, he still has star billing. The Tocal Field Days near Maitland are a 3-day feature on what's happening down on the farm, and unlike any other festival, no one is too worried by the rain.
I think all farmers are so pleased to see the wet weather that they're quite high-spirited here today.
There are 450 exhibitors, and for the first time in its 13-year history, there's a special feature on women in agriculture, looking at the problems women face on the land.
The main issue is isolation and lack of communication networks. So if women aren't able to know what services are available or where they can get help, they're really behind the 8 ball.
There's a tiny cow valued at $16,000, rainbow-coloured goats, even a lawnmower that's powered by the sun. The show finishes on Sunday. More than 30,000 people are expected through the gates. Peter Ryan, NBN News. It's becoming an all too familiar sight, the beach at Stockton being eaten away by pounding surf. Another 2 metres of beachfront was sucked out to sea. Locals say Newcastle Council has to stop talking about the problem and get something done.
Up until this point, the council have been really good, but lately there's been no communication whatsoever. The communication lines just seems to have closed up.
Surf Club members say sandbagging is a practical and affordable way to go. Meanwhile, the heavy swell has delayed the departure of a major section of a new oil rig. Built at Kooragang Island, the 1,200-tonne West Tuna platform was due to be towed down to Port Kembla. Rainfall was limited across the Hunter, most towns lucky to get 2 or 3 millimetres. Farmers are in desperate need of more rain.
We need a lot more rain at the moment to help us through the winter.
"29-year-old Darren Spradbro disappeared from his Yarrowitch home near Warhope in March 1994. 5 months later, acting on a tip-off, police discovered his body buried under logs on the neighbouring property of his uncle, Brian Leslie Smith. Smith was charged with the murder, but pleaded his innocence, claiming that on the day of the crime he'd been at a hotel at Burwood in Sydney, passing information about a drug deal on to 2 policemen. In August last year, a jury found Smith not guilty. Today, however, Smith was brought before a Sydney court accused of making his alibi up. Despite the arguments of his lawyer, Rosemary Freeman, he was refused bail.
He will be fighting the case every step of the way. He was acquitted of the murder, and that's his stance. He maintains his plea of not guilty at all times, and he'll fight to the end.
Ms Freeman says Smith will make a new application for bail next Wednesday in the Supreme Court. The 2 policemen alleged to have acted with Smith were serving officers in the Sydney area. Both have also been charged with conspiring to pervert the course of justice. Only one has so far faced court. Ian Cameron, NBN News.
On the surface, Lake Macquarie is a tranquil place, but look a little deeper and you'll find an undercurrent of tension. Local anglers divided over how these waters should be fished.
Lake Macquarie here is going down in fish stocks, and we believe that the area here has to be protected, and the way to do that is through a proper management plan.
More than 100 fishermen met with the Director of Fisheries at Guandolen today. Recreational fishermen want the lake turned into a marine reserve, zoning areas according to use, such as fish breeding or water skiing. Their most controversial proposal, to stop the use of haul nets by professionals. The professional fishermen who operate on Lake Macquarie say a ban on haul nets would mean an end to their livelihood.
This co-op is a large supplier to the Sydney market.
Fisheries Director John Glaister is charged with helping professional and recreational fishermen to coexist in harmony.
I don't think banning one side or the other is the answer to the problem. I think that Lake Macquarie has got some substantial environmental problems, and that is affecting fish production.
Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Lute Song just outstaying the Old Grey and returning 6:30 and 2:10. With Brisbane washed out, the feature race was the Australasian Oaks in Adelaide. A Quinella to Peter Hayes with Like a Smile and Miss Margaret, the winner returning 5:80 and 2:10. And jockey Aaron Hugh is recovering tonight after this fall during race 3 in Newcastle. His Mount Imperial Knight appeared to slip on the track, which was amazingly rated dead. The horse was unhurt. Hugh is suffering from shoulder and rib injuries.
About 4:30 this morning, a man driving along Scenic Drive at San Remo ran over a man lying on the roadway. The driver told police he couldn't avoid hitting the 31-year-old from Noraville. The crash investigation unit was at the scene today. They haven't ruled out the possibility the deceased had been struck by another car earlier this morning. They're calling for any information from witnesses. Meanwhile, a youth was killed when the Holden Kingswood sedan he was driving ran off Main Road at Dora Creek, south of Newcastle, into a power pole about 4 o'clock this morning. Although attempts were made to revive the 19-year-old driver from Dora Creek, he died at the scene. Police are unsure what caused the crash.
The Westpac rescue chopper made a show of appreciation over Newcastle Harbour as the cyclists began the last leg of their 1,000-kilometre journey by ferry. It's been a gruelling hike through the back roads of New South Wales, but the goal of saving lives kept spirits up through 2 weeks of torrential rain. Joining the pack today was champion Ironman Guy Andrews.
Something like this for me is probably not so bizarre, but you know, for these guys, it's pretty awesome to be riding 1,000k in a couple of weeks. Yeah.
But the real Ironmen of the trip were Troy and Craig Newman, who made the trip in tandem. Both suffer serious diabetes. Troy is in remission from cancer and Craig is legally blind. While a 1,000-kilometre pedal may not be everyone's idea of fun, Troy and Craig say it was a laugh.
He just tells me jokes, cracks me up all the time, and half the time I've got to pull over because I go dizzy. He cracks me up so much.
So far, the ride has raised $30,000 and organisers say they're still expecting more donations to flow in. Laura Saperstein, NBN News. The overcast, gloomy skies of Newcastle were today a fitting backdrop for the sombre occasion. World War II veterans marched to remember their countrymen who gave the supreme sacrifice more than half a century ago.
Today we remember the Battle of Coral Sea, which started the turning back of the Japanese war machine.
The Battle of Coral Sea, which spanned from the 4th to the 8th of May 1942, halted the Japanese advance towards Port Moresby, marking a turning point in the war. Today, Australians offered a prayer of gratitude for their freedom. They've waited 100 years for this day, so a little rain wasn't going to keep these bowlers off the green. Braving nothing short of horrible conditions, they scrambled, in that quiet bowling way, to be part of a century of history. Inside, hundreds helped celebrate the birthday in a more traditional style. One old-timer nearing his 50th year as a member of the club said a century is just the beginning.
We have to be here for another 100 to be back to the seats for the next 100.
A big ask for Alf Smith maybe, but judging by the turnout today, there's little doubt this won't be the only century Hamilton Bowling Club will ever score. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
In line with its commitment to finally go ahead with the missing link road, the state government is now calling for interested parties to register their comments on the route and impact of the planned West Charlestown bypass. The 6-kilometre road will extend from Windale via an interchange off the Pacific Highway and enter Charlestown Road above Katara. The route includes proposed traffic interchanges and a flyover at Windale. A firm of consultants has been hired to carry out a review of environmental factors, including the impact on flora and fauna, businesses and communities. Noise and air quality concerns will also be taken into consideration. The member for Charlestown, Richard Face, is urging interested residents or groups to have their say ahead of the planned construction early next year. Andrew Lobb, NBN News.
"18-year-old Paul Gibson lay in a bed of Newcastle's John Hunter Hospital today. A promising boxing career cut short after his neck was broken 2 Saturdays ago while playing for the Cessnock under-19s team.
I was playing football, mate, and I ran into the tackle with my head down and just sort of jarred my neck back and broke it.
The injury has ruined any hopes the former New South Wales champion had of representing his country at the year 2000 Olympics. Tragically, his brother's boxing career also ended with a rugby league injury. Their father and boxing trainer Fred Gibson is now asking why boxing receives all the negative publicity. He's called for greater safety in rugby league.
Paul boxed from 9 years old, 18 years old, and he's never had an injury from boxing. He plays 10 minutes of football and gets a broken neck. So you tell me which is the safest way to go.
Unfortunately, Paul won't be able to compete in either sport, but he will be out of his hospital bed within the next few days and walking within the next couple of weeks. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
The bridal fair has experts offering couples all the choices available to them on the day, from what dress to wear to where to spend the first night together. According to organisers, men are taking a greater interest in wedding plans, and while some may feign boredom, they are more than happy to share in the fun.
It is a joint event, isn't it? And I think that's true. I think that men now are much more interested. There's much more emphasis on clothes for men and sort of things, bucks nights, things like that.
But what every bride hopes for is a wedding day that is unique.
I think people are spending more and more money on their wedding, and they want it to be special. They want it to be unusual. They want it to be different to everyone else's. I think that's the thing that's coming through very much now.
The highlight of the bridal fair is tonight's fashion parade. Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Racing history is littered with love affairs between horse and rider. Another has blossomed in Paul Perry's stable, with a young apprentice and a 4-year-old grey gelding combining for their 5th win from 6 starts last Saturday. That was Tanya's 38th victory, her sweetest and an early birthday present, as she turned 27 yesterday.
Yeah, it was really good. I've won on him at Rose Hill before, but my dream is to win at Randwick now on a Saturday.
Most horses like they run for a Paul, lovely balance, and they seem to give their best.
Can you explain that in any particular way?
She's a lovely, kind girl.
But Tanya's touch goes well beyond horses. After finishing every morning at the track, she and fellow jockey Brendan Franks return home to 15-month-old daughter Cassie J and babysitter Barbara McGregor. And when she's not strangling the cat, which just happens to be named Tim Brasher, Cassie's showing off her riding skills inherited from Mum.
It's scaring me, actually. I don't want it to, but it's in her blood, I suppose, yeah.
Ironically, it was those same fears held by Tanya's father that didn't see her start riding till she was 22, which eventually led to a mix of motherhood and racing.
I found it very hard at first to get rides and that sort of thing. Then I had Cassie, and so I had 12 months off then, and I went back to Paul, and I've just gone from there.
Her dream was well known could be achieved at Randwick this Saturday, when she will once again attempt to upstage the men, including partner Brendan.
I might ride a winner at Taree and then Tanya rides one in Sydney, so she's always outdoing me there. Yeah.
How does that feel? I suppose it doesn't matter as long as she's riding winners.
No, as long as she comes home with the money, it's the same thing. Pays the house off. Yeah.
While most householders own one, few give much thought to their lawnmower or the effect it's having on the environment. New research from the United States Environmental Protection Authority now shows a badly tuned lawnmower is an important minor source of greenhouse gases and other ozone-damaging agents.
From overseas evidence, particularly in the US, there is a suggestion that a lawnmower with its unregulated emissions can actually put out as much pollution as 10 cars.
A team of researchers at Newcastle University has received funding from the Federal Environment Protection Authority to investigate the effects Australian lawnmowers are having. They're looking at how often and when the average householder uses their mower and then observing what sort of emissions it produces.
And the emissions are in 2 levels. First level is a greenhouse gas type emission like carbon dioxide, and the federal government's interested in that for the National Greenhouse Gas Inventory. The second level is an urban air pollution problem type emission.
The study should be complete by the end of the year. Emma Ossian, NBN News.
Malreely's problem of where to slot returning City Origin centre Jamie Ainscough was unfortunately solved with Darren Albert's fractured collarbone. Ainscough, who was playing with a broken hand, is now struggling with a back complaint.
If Jamie doesn't come through his fitness test, and he's got to come through a fitness test first, then we'll look at replacing a winger.
Teenager Matthew Gidley is a likely replacement if Ainscough isn't cleared. Better news for Mark Glanville, who appears to be recovering from a badly bruised shoulder. He was cleared of serious injury by club doctor Neil Halpin this morning.
He's also trained with us and he's come through the session quite well. Naturally, it'll still be a bit tender, but like it hit a Mack truck.
Ainscogh's inclusion is the only change to the team to take on Gold Coast on Sunday, which will be the last chance to impress selectors with State of Origin teams announced later that night.
Stepping into what was arguably the most critical crisis of the war in Bosnia, the Blue Beret General Michael Rose was the man the world wanted to see get tough with forces inflicting terrible atrocities on civilians.
My view is that we are here at a start with a complete change of attitudes.
UN ultimatums met mixed results. Fighting dragged on. General Rose wasn't there to win a war, but to reduce the suffering of civilians.
Certainly, I think the United Nations record in Bosnia-Herzegovina is one that the young 23,500 men and women who went to work there as peacekeepers could be justifiably proud. And of course, much of the infrastructure of the United Nations in Bosnia was actually put in place by ex-Australian Army engineers, and they did a superb job.
Australians too have distinguished themselves serving in many of the world's other troubled spots. Before Bosnia, Australian Lieutenant General John Sanderson commanded the UN's biggest deployment to Cambodia.
Well, there was some public opposition, but my sense of it was that there was overwhelming support for our operations in Cambodia, and indeed for our operations in Somalia and Rwanda and Namibia and Western Sahara. We find that there's great Australian support for peacekeeping operations. It's a good thing for our people to be doing. It's rewarding in many ways, but the people seem to like it.
For 16-year-old Nathan Healy and 14-year-old Melissa Dowse, a vigorous early morning workout is part of their everyday training. The talented players are among only a handful selected to represent Australia at the Tennis World Youth Cup. Melissa will compete in the under-14s to be held in China, while Nathan will play in the under-16s. Both are looking forward to the challenge of playing against the world's best in their age.
Can't wait, and it'll be good for my tennis because I'll be able to know what standard they are.
For Nathan, it's not the first time he's competed at this level.
It'll be tougher this time because I'm sure the Europeans have improved a lot and they're the tough ones. So, and on their surface, the clay, they'll be tough.
According to regional coach Greg Healy, it's an indication of the strength of players on the Central Coast.
The standard that Gosford's producing at the moment is quite high. It's a little bit unique, as in having two represent Australia at this level.
Police began a search of the house after receiving an anonymous tip. Once inside, they found a large number of weapons and ammunition. It took them some time to place them in a car.
Police executed a search warrant at East Gosford early hours this morning, and as a result we have seized a large quantity of rifles and pistols, and we're making further inquiries in relation to that. In addition, we seized a very large quantity of ammunition.
In the wake of the Port Arthur tragedy, police are urging people to come forward if they are concerned about collections of weapons.
It's very disturbing to me to see at this particular point of time the amount of firearms that are out in the community that are not being kept safely in accordance with the regulations.
No one was home at the time of the raid, but police are conducting further investigations and hope to question a man. Amanda Bolger, NBN News. In the last 10 days, the Australian reptile park at Gosford has been inundated with funnel web spiders after people found the creatures in houses.
We had in 2 days 36 male funnel webs brought in, and over that time, probably a week and a half, we've had well over 100.
According to Lynn Abra, the deadly spider is not fussy about where it seeks moisture and companionship.
They fall into swimming pools and can't get out, so you have to be aware of that. And of course they come inside houses. You can find them in lounge rooms, bedrooms. Probably the commonest area within the house is bathrooms and laundries because it's moist in there and it's cool and damp.
People are being urged not to walk around the house in the dark without shoes and be cautious of clothing and linen that has been lying on the floor. The 13-year-old boy was bitten on the finger when he picked up a towel in the bathroom. He was rushed to hospital and given antivenom and has now completely recovered. However, not all funnel web bite victims are so lucky.
They've caused 13 deaths. In fact, the last death occurred on the Central Coast. It was a small boy, and they have caused death over the years.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News. If the popularity of the skateboard ramp at Wyoming is anything to go by, then the $80,000 have been well spent. The Central Coast in the past has had a worrying youth crime rate, but this is changing.
This has reduced the, if I could say, crime rate of malicious damage in shopping centres by about 7 or 8%.
According to local youth, it's these facilities that gets them off the street and relieves boredom, which often leads to antisocial behaviour.
This has been really good, giving them something to do, but a lot more still needs to be done.
Riding on the success of the ramp, plans are underway to expand the recreation area.
We've got a basketball court, we've got various sporting fields and also a sensory walk for the blind and disabled that's going in.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.